It's a good old-fashioned Big 12 showdown. UCF, Kansas State. Who are the players to watch?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G. Thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. Turn us up, turn us on, we'll turn it out. I'm here with my good friend Christian from Locked On Kansas State Wildcats to talk a little Big 12 football. It's a Locked On crossover. We do it like no one does it. This is going to be one of many we do this week. This is UCF's Big 12 opener. It is not Kansas State's Big 12 opener, but the Wildcats have started 1-3, much to the chagrin of Kansas State fans. UCF 3-0, and they'll be looking to go 4-0 on Saturday as they travel to Manhattan. Tough place to go play, Christian. On today's show, we're going to talk about the UCF players to watch and the K-State players to watch. Christian and I are each going to give one guy that you need to keep your eye on. And then we're going to talk about the battle of the quarterbacks here. Avery Johnson versus Taven Jackson. Who is likely to push their team ahead at the end of the segment? We're going to give our predictions on how we think this one is going to go on the scoreboard. Let's start at the top, Christian. It's UCF. It's Kansas State. This is the matchup nobody wanted, but it's the matchup that you're getting here in week 4 for UCF, week 5 here because you guys played week 0. K-State does playmakers. There was a reason they were voted to finish second in the Big 12 on our internal Locked On poll. For those of you who don't remember, this is what we voted. We voted the Sun Devils won. They lost to Mississippi State already. Yikes. Kansas State 2, Texas Tech 3, Baylor 4. The Iowa State Cyclones, who play Kansas State there in Dublin, 5. The BYU Cougars at 6, and then you see the rest there. UCF way down at 15 with a lonely old Arizona. But if you had it to do all over again, maybe people wouldn't doubt the Knights because they've got some players that you probably never heard of. But give our listeners a player to watch here, not named Avery Johnson, that should be making plays for Kansas State here on Saturday.
Yeah, well, let's hope that it is this player that's making plays for Kansas State on Saturday because it hasn't happened yet so far this season, and that's Dylan Edwards. Dylan Edwards has been injured since the jump, basically, it's felt like, Mike, because he got hurt on the punt return in Dublin before they even had a chance to play an offensive play, had a high ankle sprain, it looked like. He was out for a couple weeks, gets back to Arizona last Friday night before the bye week, and gets in for 4 offensive snaps, gets 4 carries, and then hurts it up again. Chris Klieman on Monday said that he feels like he can get up to full speed. Hopefully everything works well with practice. And if so, then maybe, and just maybe, and let me just say, I'm not as optimistic as I should, and I'm definitely not as optimistic as I was at the beginning in this offseason when we talked this offseason about how I thought Kansas State was going to be. But maybe you'll see this offense perform the way it should be, with their hair on fire, something that Chris Klieman said in his presser on Monday.
Look, Kansas State as all kind of one of those underdog schools that just every once in a while they put together a season for the ages. My favorite throwback here, my favorite Kansas State team, L. Robertson, Darren Sproles.
Oh, yeah.
Not many people remember them absolutely drubbing Oklahoma in the Big 12 title game that year. I remember that game fondly. It was Jason White was the quarterback, I believe, of that team. He Heisman winner, but it was a lot of controversy around that, and Kansas State was so underrated. And since then, you kind of are waiting for them to have that season like they used to, those seasons like they used to have. I believe L. Robertson got suspended in that middle of that season for a few games, and that's essentially what kind of held that team back from being a national title contender. But in the era of a 12-team playoff, Kansas State absolutely should be in the conversation for a playoff spot. When you have players like Kansas State, what sends you down the path of 1-3 so early?
Yeah, Chris Kleiman's using the words lack of execution, lack of discipline, and then starting to question talent. So that's where we're at right now when it comes to the Kansas State football team and the program itself. I think it's the play calling. I mean, I don't think the play calling has lived up to par on the offensive side. I think they're not utilizing Avery Johnson enough, and I know we're going to talk about him in full in just a minute, so I won't go in too deep, but I don't think they're utilizing him enough. And then if you look at some of these games, Iowa State in the second half, Army in the second half, the defense couldn't get off the field. They were absolutely gassed, and you know how that works. It just never works for any defense. If they can't live up to their potential, if they're absolutely gassed against a service academy that'll beat you for 3-4 yards a pop, or against a team like Iowa State who was playing with their hair on fire in Dublin, trying to get to their first win, and always a tough rivalry game of Farmageddon. So it just hasn't worked, hasn't clicked. And I talked about Dylan Edwards at the beginning of this segment, how I think he is your key player to watch if he plays in full on this one. They were expecting him to have a big impact right off the bat in the game in Iowa State, and losing him before even getting offensive snap was easily visible. You could tell that the game plan was not set up to not have Dylan Edwards. And what's weird and what's wild is it felt that same way in week 2 and 3 when they knew he wasn't going to be in the game. So hopefully if he's in and they can work around him and plan around him yet again, this time it can be successful.
Yeah, Dylan Edwards, a mere 4 carries for 13 yards this season. So if he gets going,
it
makes a difference.
Yeah, and the thing is, Mike, those 4 carries all came last Friday against Arizona. You felt like the train was starting to move. You could start to see a little bit of momentum, although it doesn't have a lot of yards. But he was finally getting outside the tackle. He was getting himself past the line of scrimmage, something that these other running backs haven't done yet. Just having that difference maker of Dylan Edwards out there, if you're looking at the box score, you're not going to believe this. But if you go back and watch those plays, especially if you've paid attention to Kansas State football this entire season, it was different. And if he's back on the field, hopefully it can remain different.
On the other side, UCF has a guy who's going to start to become a household name here, and I think it's Dwayne Thomas Jr. at wide receiver. He leads UCF with 12 receptions, 148 yards, 12.3 yards per catch. Taven Jackson throws a pretty good deep ball in my book. I think that the ability to create explosive plays in the when there's a talent gap between you and maybe those teams that got voted at the top of the league, it evens the equation when you're going against a team that on paper should beat you. Now, UCF has a lot of names that, a lot of transfers in Scott Frost's first year, a lot of names that a lot of people will not know. But Dwayne Thomas Jr. starting to emerge as a guy who can just go out and make plays. Scott Frost really liked his wide receiver room, Christian, going into fall camp. He actually praised this group and said, we think we have playmakers at receiver. You need guys with range and catch radius in this league if you want to win at a consistent level. But, he's not Dwayne Thomas, not a big guy. He's not a big guy, but he plays with a ton of heart. And Taven Jackson seems to be his go-to receiver at this point. So making a bunch of guys who have never played before gel together so quickly it's been surprising. I think that you see a Dwayne Thomas Jr.'s number called early and often here in this matchup with K-State. When you go on the road, you need playmakers to show up. I don't care if Kansas State's 1-3. I'm telling you, they're not just going to lie down and give you the game. You got to go take it. And to do that, they're going to need Dwayne Thomas Jr. Before we get to the break here, give me one more name maybe UCF fans may not have heard of, but should be looking out for on Saturday.
Okay, well, I'll give you 2 actually, because I'll add into your mix there, because I think the secondary itself in Kansas State has been possibly a huge question mark. But then again, there's a guy like Zayshawn Rich, who has taken over as really the top cornerback on the squad. They had 83 defensive snaps last week against Arizona. This is going back to that same thing where the defense couldn't get off the field, Mike. Zayshawn played all 83 snaps. They feel like they have confidence in him. He does get some targets, multiple targets to him, and he does let up some catches. So maybe that does come into your narrative quite well. But has become quite a confident defender, and he really came out in the bowl game just last year against Rutgers. The other player that you need to watch, though, is Austin Romaine. He's a linebacker for this Kansas State squad, has the All-American potential, was named to the preseason All-Big 12 as a linebacker, has the potential to be a top 75 draft pick in the NFL draft this upcoming season. However, that potential, like Kansas State itself, just hasn't showed up this season. He was great last year. If you look at all his PFF numbers, data points, you name it. This year, he's not living up to that potential so far. Name maybe the surrounding cast that hurt him, or some of that discipline and execution that Chris Kleiman likes to talk about. I'd love to see a bounce back game from him. He is one of the leaders on this squad and definitely could be a huge plus for Kansas State. So that's my key on defense.
Oh, I like it. I like it. Look, all that's great, but the quarterbacks are going to get way too much criticism and probably not enough praise for whatever happens on Saturday. We'll talk about the matchup of Avery Johnson versus Taven Jackson here on Locked On UCF. A Locked On K-State. It's a Locked On crossover. Let's hear from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF, Locked On Crossover, is brought to you by our friends at Square. This your favorite neighborhood spot runs on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's the local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are places that bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. So Square helps make that possible, and that's why they are an important neighborhood partner for your local business that you patron. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnCollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. This episode of Locked On UCF is also brought to you by our friends at Game Time. College football is back. We couldn't be more excited. I know Christian's excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. There's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. What's a football fan to do? That's why we use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay, and what you pay for is panoramic seat view, so you know where you're sitting before you get there. This is super important. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Christian, Avery Johnson is on Kansas State.
Polarizing name. Polarizing name right now.
You knew where I was going with that one there. Mr. Avery Johnson, a 60.6 completion percentage, maybe a little underwhelming so far this season. He does have 25 carries for 62 yards, or 62.5 yards per carry. Is it fair to say that as he goes, Kansas State goes? It's a little bit of disappointing start to the season for him. But, how do you get Avery Johnson going, the guy that we saw make so many plays last year for Kansas State?
Yeah, this is where my mind sits on here. And, it absolutely runs through Avery Johnson. There's no doubt about that. I think you could probably make that argument for 90% of college football teams, saying the quarterback, it runs through 100%. It is no different when it comes to Kansas State, Mike. If you were to ask me that question, though, if you felt it's an underwhelming season, regardless of the record before the Arizona game, I might push back at you. But I think he had arguably one of his worst games as a starter in a Kansas State uniform last Friday against Arizona. And the completion percentage was bad, 44%. There was some design runs that didn't work out. Now, I'm not saying that they were completely his fault. He did trip on one of them, but there was a couple other ones where the offensive line were turning around and yelling, "Look out." There was just no blocking help for Kansas State whatsoever in that one. The completion number is a number that everybody loves to talk about with Avery Johnson. I push back a little bit from this because the wide receivers are dreadful right now. There's only a couple of big portions here. Jace Brown's been stepping up, and big play Jace. If it's step up, you're probably going to get a big play from Jace Brown. It's like Def Taxes, big play Jace when it comes to Kansas State football this year. There's probably going to be one big play. So there's another key player to watch for your folks over here on UCF. But if I'm Avery Johnson, I need to get these wide receivers to catch the football. 10 drops so far, according to PFF on the season, and that's what's really hurting his completion rating. I know that the adjusted completion rating looks a lot better than him, but he's got to run the football. That's where my mindset goes. I'm not too worried about the completion percentage. I think that'll get fixed. The play calling and him actually making decision to tuck it and go is the biggest thing that I'm going to look for in this game against UCF, especially with your defense. Your defense has surprised so many teams this season. It's really been a shock. I think that's what's really doing it.
We tried to warn people that this could be a really, really good fit here at UCF, and I expected them to be better than most people expected, and lo and behold, Christian, they have been. This was not a talentless football team last year. And the 4-8 record, I think, fooled a lot of people. It fooled a lot. UCF went 4-8, but what I remember is that they could have and should have beat ASU last year. Now, Cam Scatterboo sat out that game, so it gets a little bit of an asterisk, but UCF had enough talent, minus one player, to be in it. And they lost that game. And, now that they're not going to be gussing themselves this year. It's coaching could be the difference between 4 wins and making a bowl game. So I expect that the defense will continue to be a strength for Scott Frost this season. Guys like Sincere, Edwards, these guys are out there playing their butts off, man, defensively. But why that is important is that when you get off the field on third down, you get the ball back to an offense that desperately needs touches to continue to gel. And that's where Taven Jackson comes in. Taven Jackson was the guy we expected to win the job in the offseason. Cam Fancher won it. Everyone was like, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, our commenters have been, our listeners who hit the comment section have been really on it so far this season, and we agree with them. We were iffy on Cam Fancher. He had an iffy start. I think that he can continue to develop under Scott Frost and McKenzie Milton, but Taven Jackson stepped in looking like a seasoned vet. He had one bad drive, and then it's been gangbusters since then. So, I think this, in the battle of quarterbacks here, at least for right now, it's advantage UCF. He has the ability to be able to create explosive plays in the passing game, throwing the ball downfield, and that helps mitigate some of what they lack, especially running the ball right now. I would say Myles Montgomery and J.D. Nixon have underwhelmed. Those guys are talented, but they have not quite hit their stride yet. Taven Jackson has stepped in, and he has helped fill the void offensively for UCF. So I think it's advantage UCF at quarterback right now.
You know what? As much as I want to disagree with you, as much as I want to say Avery Johnson should be the guy that should be taking the cake in this conversation. I mean, this offseason, heading into the year, I went out on a limb and said I think he can be a dark horse candidate for the Heisman Trophy because of the amount of hype and the amount of dual threat quarterbackness that Avery Johnson should have. We have seen none of that, and to the point to where that I almost think that you have to completely almost negate and remove the whole dual threat quarterback conversation to Avery Johnson's to his thought process, to his list, his resume, until it changes, because it hasn't worked this year. Until it changes, until he starts running the football more, whether you want to say that's his decision making or the play calling of Matt Wells, or maybe a mix of both. I don't know. Right now, I don't know the complete answer. We'll see if that changes. But I think if it doesn't change after this game in UCF, then UCF not only has the advantage at quarterback, they're probably going to be 4-0 heading into this one after Manhattan.
Yeah, look, UCF, the number one pass defense in the Big 12 right now. Who would have thought that? Allowing only 117 yards per game so far through 4 weeks. Now they had a bye, so they've only got 3 games under their belt. So you put a little bit of an asterisk there. But as far as rush defense is concerned, it's middling. They're in the middle of the pack there at 129 yards allowed per game. But you've got to be, he's only 60%. You got to come in here and you got to make Avery Johnson a sub 60% passer in this game. I know it's in their house, but if he's struggling, attack the thing that they're struggling at. And you can do that by forcing him into uncomfortable plays, get him out, flush him out of the pocket, make him throw on the run, make him beat you with his arm. Do not let Kansas State control the ball on the. Don't let them get running all over the place. Don't allow anything in the run game.
That hasn't happened all year, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel, but preseason, not a lot of people would have thought that UCF had the horses to get that done on defense, especially versus Kansas State. I had this one firmly chalked as an L when we did our schedule review, and now it was. I don't know that anybody could have foreseen Kansas State being where they are right now at 1-3. I could not predict that. So, look, all this talk about offense, defense, key players, quarterbacks, it's all got to amount to something. So what we're going to do here right after a quick word from our sponsors, as we're going to make our predictions, we're going to make our picks, and we're going to talk about who we think will win this game. We'll get to that right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF, Locked On K-State, a Locked On crossover is brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence in every ride with more IIHS Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August of 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same attention to how they craft every single model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like UCF and K-State players sweat every detail, so does Mazda, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Prediction time. We're going to close our segment giving our score predictions. I like the Knights in this one. I don't expect the Wildcats to do nothing, but I do think they have what it takes to pull defensive pressure on Kansas State. There's something about when a team is down, they're down. And if you're UCF, kick Kansas State while they're down. Absolutely zero manners. Just come to the table, put your elbows on the table, grab a beer without asking, walk into Manhattan, and do your best. Play, leave it all on the field, and pull out a win here in your Big 12 opener. Christian, hope is back in Orlando. Scott Frost has brought hope back to UCF fans. It was taken from them by the last coach, and Scott Frost, he set real expectations in year one, but so far through 3 games, he's over-delivered, in my opinion, based on everyone that knows what he was left. This is a rebuild. So I like the Knights 33-20 in this one. Close game for most of it, and, a late touchdown or two puts the Knights up a couple scores here. Talk to me, man. What do you see? How do you see this one playing out for Kansas State?
Well, I'll put this for the record. Every single game this season for Kansas State, all 4 of them have been within 1 score. So most of them have been 3 points. Only the Arizona game was a little bit more than 3 points. So 13, little bit high in my opinion, but I'm not too opposed. Look, it could completely happen. Kansas State has not proved anything to me so far this season. You talk about how there's hope back to Orlando. There is no hope in Kansas State. We are on full desperation mode in Manhattan. It's desperation. We're sniffing the fumes of trying to save this season. That's exactly where it's at. And they're only in the 5th game of the year. This is a game where they should have been riding high, should have been seen this, with all respect to UCF, should have been seen this as an easy chalk up, a green W on the scoreboard, as you mentioned this offseason. This is exactly what Kansas State should have been. Now, just like last week, I predicted them to lose to Arizona. I think that they have a really big shot at losing again. For the sake of my sanity and for the sake of showing that I think there is one thing left in the can for Chris Kleiman and Matt Wells, I think they find a way to get it done because they have no other choice, Mike. That's where I think they're already at this season. If they lose this football game, I think we might be talking Oklahoma State type of scenarios that might be coming down the road for Kansas State. It might be getting to that point in time, at least in the coordinator position for sure. So I think that they're going to pull out all the stops, especially if Dylan Edwards is there. I don't think that UCF or Kansas State cover either the spread, which I think is 4.5 in the favor of Kansas State at the moment. It is moving in that direction. I think Kansas State wins this one. I don't have much confidence in it, but I'm going to go 24-21 Kansas State.
All right, a nail biter in UCF's Big 12 season opener. I like that score. I think that is very realistic. At the end of the day, we're still kind of figuring out what and who UCF is, especially in year one. It's really hard to tell. Now, they played Jacksonville State. Charles Kelly coaches that team, but they didn't have their quarterback for a quarter and a half of that when they pulled away after Taven Jackson, got in there. And then you had North Carolina A&T, and then you've got a North Carolina team that really underwhelmed. So I'm not sure how much of a test that was for them either. UCF dominated that game. Kansas State has the ability to actually test them because I'm not sure how well they've been tested these first 3 games. It's a good sign that you won them still, especially coming off a 4-8 season. You've already won 3 games. So for everyone who said UCF wasn't going to make a bowl game, they're halfway to the prize already, and we're only a few weeks in. But I think that's a very, very realistic score. And
and that's a narrative I've heard this week too, Mike, about the strength of schedule. Kansas State sits somewhere in the 30s in strength of schedule, and UCF sits in the 200s. So there's a huge disparity. It's a huge disparity. But I don't think that it's I don't think that's anything you should look at. Wins in college football are hard. I mean, winning in football is hard, period. And what Scott Frost has done is super respectful. And I think you got to find a way to get it done. Avery Johnson and the offensive needs to find a way to get them in the back and just find a way to win this football game. Because if they don't, then I think you start seeing a complete downfall of this Kansas State program, something that you saw as a powerhouse really change. I think there's going to be a potential big change in the Big 12, and it might not just be Mike Gundy in Oklahoma State.
Interesting tidbit there about a possible midseason coaching change. Look, these types of results demand accountability, Christian, and that usually means that somebody's got to go on the chopping block. So if you're climbing, you're either putting some coordinators on the chopping block, or you may find your head under the guillotine. It's going to be interesting to watch here. Either way, his team needs to look prepared, and they need to battle hard. And if you're going to lose this game, you cannot look hapless in a loss here. I think it 1-3. So just my thought. Christian from Locked On at K-State Wildcats is joining me here today, giving you guys all the UCF K-State coverage you can handle. Please go subscribe to our friends. We're friends, but my friends go over and talk to his friends as well too. And if you want to check out your written work, where can people find your written work?
Yeah, got some written work going on there at the blueprintsportsnetwork.com. You can check that out. Dropping stuff about Kansas State, dropping stuff about all college football. So you can check that at the Blueprint Sports Network. And I just want to clear one more thing up. I talked strength of schedule. Didn't sound right because I said the word 200. There's 136 teams. Kansas State strength of schedule 65, UCF 134 out of 136. So still a huge disparity.
Yeah. Thank you for that tidbit. Guys, that's it for another great edition of Locked On here with UCF and Kansas State. But it's another big moment on College Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year, Gary Patterson. former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college preview only Locked On can do. Catch college football kickoff every Thursday throughout the season and only on Fire TV. Catch us here tomorrow on Locked On.